Hello everyone, welcome back to another talk. Now recently I've spoken about content creation, relying somewhat heavily on topics of far more experienced content creators than myself. But this time I wanted to talk about what is sometimes called the dark side of content creation. Stans. Or their more extreme version, simps. Now, there's been an increasingly large amount of conversation about simps specifically, but there's been a longer conversation about stans in general. And everyone likes to complain about other people's stans. Actually, really quick before we get into this conversation, I suppose I should lay out the difference between a fan, a stan, and a simp. A fan is someone who just enjoys the content. This covers most people. You see a video of a content creator you like, you click on it, you have a really nice time watching the video, maybe you leave a comment, or if it's a live stream, maybe you post a couple of comments, maybe you don't, but you watch it as much as you can if it's a stream, and then you go about your day as normal. A stan is someone who, besides just enjoying the content, whether it's... I'm using video examples here because this is on YouTube, obviously, but this also applies to music people as well. But a stan is someone who goes the extra distance and hangs on to every word said by the content creator to the point where they take it as a sort of... A stan is a better way to put it, actually. I was about to get into this really complex thing. The best way to describe a stan is a fan of someone who gets personally insulted if someone else doesn't like that same content creator. The most visible example of this are the infamous K-pop stans, where if you don't like their group, they don't like you. That's a pretty, I would say, pinpoint definition of what a stan is. Alright, these are people who get personally insulted if you don't like their favorite whatever. A simp is the next step beyond a stan. Simps are people who want to be, believe themselves to be, or believe they have a chance at being in a relationship with the content creator of choice. Okay? That's what a simp is. Someone who wants to be in a relationship with their content creator, or deludes themselves into thinking they have such a relationship. That's the three categories here. Most people don't progress past the fan page. I can't speak tonight. Most people don't progress past the fan stage, because most people don't obsess over given content creators. Now, I want to also be very clear. Being excited about a new release by your favorite artist or your favorite content creator does not make you a stan. Because if somebody else doesn't like that particular content creator, you're not personally insulted. Right? It's not some kind of deep blow to your personal ego. Stans essentially incorporate their fondness for a given content creator of any variety into their beings, into their personalities. Right? That's what a stan is. So, everyone has these. All content creators past a certain viewership have these. I would say somewhere between 1 and 2,000 seems to be when most people begin picking up noticeable stans. Okay? It's entirely possible prior to that given content creators may have stans before that. They're just silent stans. They're stans that don't necessarily post. Because you can be a stan and not actually leave comments. Because if somebody... for example, let's say I said I didn't like Taylor Swift's new music. As a honest opinion of mine, I'm not fond of her newest album. It's not my thing. whether or not you leave a comment, if that personally insulted you, you would be a stan. If you were like, well, I disagree, but fair enough, then you're just a fan. Right? Some percentage of stans are simps. Period. That's just flat out. And everyone has them. Everyone. Because simps don't necessarily have to be based on visual appearance. A lot of them are. I'll give you that. However, some simps cling to a content creator arguably not on the basis of physical attraction, but on the attraction of different ideas. There can be, I've noticed, such things as ideological simps. A great example of this would be Andrew Tate or Aiden Ross, whose simps allegedly aren't physically attracted to them. Now, there's some eyebrow-raising comments on some of these simps, and you could argue fairly effectively that at least some of these simps are physically attracted to at least Andrew Tate. That's a conversation for a different day. But they are religiously devoted to Andrew Tate, not because of his physical appearance, but because of his ideology. They attach themselves, they want to be noticed, they want to have that sort of personal connection with him, not based on physical appearance, but based on his ideas. This is why Sneeko made such a big deal about being passed the torch by Andrew Tate before Andrew Tate was shuffled off to jail. That was why you could very effectively describe Sneeko as an Andrew Tate simp. Because Sneeko wanted that personal connection, that personal relationship with Andrew Tate, not necessarily based upon physical appearance. Again, you probably could argue to some extent that existed, but the basis of that desire for personal connection was based on Andrew Tate's ideas. Same thing with Aiden Ross. Same exact deal. So while yes, a majority of simps are simps based on the sole point of personal and physical appearance, right? There is a variety, a subtype of simp, if you will, that is looking for the same kind of personal relationship, but not romantic, ideological. They want those conversations, they want to be noticed in that very specific way. Okay? So, let's keep our definition of simp fairly broad. Now, me personally, unless said content creator is spreading dangerous ideas, like Andrew Tate, I generally don't have a problem with simps. If that's how you want to spend your time and money, that's totally fine. I've never personally had an issue with K-pop simps because while K-pop isn't my cup of tea, and they'll probably be upset at me for not liking it as much as they, at the end of the day, them being fanatically devoted to K-pop, boy bands or girl bands or whatever, doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. They're not hurting anyone. Well, they're harassing people who don't like K-pop, but that's easy enough to ignore. Just block them. But I don't have a problem with them. For another more current topic, Pokimane simps. I don't have a problem with them. Pokimane's content isn't my cup of tea, and I think she has a really holier-than-thou attitude that kind of rubs me the wrong way, but if that's how they want to spend their time, that's their decision. That's totally fine, right? The point that I'm taking the long way around to is that a lot of content creators are really fond of attacking other people's stans and simps, but all content creators, particularly those benefiting or looking to benefit financially from content creation, really benefit from simps. Even myself, I've stated that I'm not here for the money, but I still would benefit from the existence of simps. They would signal boost my stuff, right? And whether or not I'm in it for the money, I will still want my stuff signal boosted. That's just how content creation works. Regardless of your goals, your end goals for content creation, all content creators want their stuff to be seen. So even the people not in it for the money benefit from simps. But nobody likes to talk about that because simps are really easy targets for public ridicule, primarily because it's seen as pathetic, it's seen as problematic. Oh no, they're going to be the downfall of the country because instead of going out and doing things, they're staying at home and watching whatever. My argument is, if they want to stay home and watch whatever, and they're not hurting anyone, more power to them. A lot of people get very upset when simps donate large quantities of money. Okay? That's their money and their choice. I don't have a problem with that. A lot of people... That was a really big basis for a lot of people being upset by the... Well, that was the real reason a lot of people on Twitch were upset way back when with the hot tub streamers, right? They would constantly come after the people who were donating to the women wandering around in indoor pools or hot tubs or whatever. Me personally, it wasn't my cup of tea. I can't understand that trend. Even today, you can still find a lot of those streams on Twitch and Kick. I don't get it. I understand that the basis of that appeal is sexual appeal. I'm kind of asexual, so I just don't get it from that perspective. Like, intellectually I understand it, but from the emotional perspective I don't. But it's also not my money. It's not my time. Right? If that's how they want to spend their money and time, that's fine. But a lot of people really don't like talking about that. This is actually probably a fairly unpopular view, right? Because a lot of people really don't like the concept of simps. But, frankly, what people do with their free time, if they're not hurting anyone, is none of my business. None of my business. If they want to simp, let them. I don't care. I don't necessarily agree with them, but as long as they can accept my disagreement with the core idea, I'm not going to stop them. I don't have a problem. And frankly, a lot of content creators, again, are fairly disingenuous in that they're perfectly willing to go after other people's stans and simps, but not address their own. And the big part of this conversation of late has been about personal responsibility for fans. At what point is a content creator not responsible for the actions of their fan base, of their stans, of their simps, etc.? For me, it really depends on the general nature of the content creator. You know, what kind of statements is the content creator making? And how much do those statements contrast or coincide with the actions of their audience? Let's take a couple of interesting examples. Let's take Leafy is here. Highly controversial figure. with a interesting and storied history in the world of content creation. If you track his content history, I'll describe it as, you'll see a gradual evolution of just what could basically be termed cyberbullying and heavy trolling to some very weird, ultra-conservative, anti a variety of groups type of narrative. Now, I'm taking Leafeus here for an example for a specific reason. I guess trigger warning in case you've survived a dangerous public event of a variety of kinds. Now, early Leafy, it wouldn't really, in fact, his audience often did go out and troll and harass people that Leafy targeted. You could argue very easily that Leafy would be responsible for that. His entire content in his early days was all about trolling and harassing and bullying people who were, in terms of content creation, in terms of content standing, weaker than him. He punched it down a lot. And his audience going and also attacking these people, it would be very easy to say that he is culpable for that because that is the message he is spreading. But let's say one of his audience members in his early days went out and committed a murder. Or even, no, we'll keep it at committed a murder. You would have a much harder time, at least in Leafy's early days, link that to Leafy. Even if his fan who had committed this murder, this is a hypothetical, by the way, just to reiterate, no fan of his has committed murder as far as I know, but let's say this hypothetical fan of Leafy's, of early Leafy, murders somebody and said, well, this is what Leafy's all about. But if you look at Leafy's content creation, yeah, sure, he was a cyberbully, yeah, sure, he would harass people, but he doesn't, or he didn't at the time, bring up murder, he didn't encourage violence. Modern Leafy, with his new ultra-conservative stance, has a lot of stuff very aggressively to say about, say, trans people, which has been his most recent target. And if a hypothetical fan of Leafy today were to go out and commit an act of violence against someone who is trans, you could very easily make an argument that Leafy would be responsible for that because the majority of his current rhetoric is very anti-trans to what some might describe as a violent degree. At least in my opinion, based on some of the statements I've heard him make upon researching him relatively recently, because I didn't know he was on Kick until a couple of months ago. And then at that particular point, I, went and researched into what he was up to, because this will be his round 3, so to speak, of content creation, so I was kind of curious, and I was somewhat surprised. But regardless of my surprise, you can see where the evolution of Leafy and the messaging he spreads, you could very easily link back to, well, whether or not you could link it back would depend on his rhetoric at the time. His rhetoric has changed. And this is very much what I use as a sort of measuring stick on how culpable a content creator is for the actions of their audience. If the audience is doing the kind of thing they've either seen you do or have heard you encourage, whether them directly or just in general, then yes, I would say that a content creator is going to be responsible for that. But if what somebody does is completely out of left field and has no relation to your content, then I would say no. In fact, this happened to PewDiePie, where one of his fans did a variety of... Well, he killed several... I'm going to leave this light. But he killed a bunch of people and claimed it was for PewDiePie, in the name of PewDiePie or whatever. But that was so far away from the nature of PewDiePie's content that it is impossible for anybody to sit there and claim that PewDiePie could be held responsible for the actions of that one fan, since that one fan did all these horrific things, killed these people, and while he claimed it was for PewDiePie, that idea, the concept of that idea, the conceptualization, doesn't exist anywhere in PewDiePie's content. Anywhere. It still doesn't to this day. It never did back in the day. At no point does PewDiePie's content encourage violence in any form. So PewDiePie is clearly not someone you can hold responsible for the activities of that fan. But again, going back to Leafy's audience harassing other people, he would be very clearly culpable of, because he does that himself in front of his audience. So naturally, his audience, a majority of whom are younger anyways, are going to imitate that. And that would be very much on Leafy, as an example here. Okay? This is one of the very few times, it's conversations like this, that content creators will actually talk about their stans and their simps in a negative fashion. It's the only time you'll hear them talk about it, is when they are discouraging their fan base from doing something, right? This is actually very common in the commentary community, where a YouTube commentator will bring up some new person's problematic behavior, and either at the beginning, middle, or end, depending on that content creator's personal preference, they will at some point say, hey, look, we're talking about this person, they've done these incorrect things, but don't go and harass them. Right? Because that's not what I want. I just want the public to be aware of the truth of this person, right? But a lot of the times in those commentary videos, you will hear the commentary YouTubers say, hey, look, don't go to these people's channels and harass them. For that reason. And generally speaking, at least from my experience, from what I've seen, commentary YouTube watchers, viewers of commentary YouTube channels, I suppose would be a more accurate term, are generally pretty good about this. Broadly speaking. Some people may disagree. That's fine. My perspective has been, so far, in my experience, the majority of the commentary fan base has been fairly disrespectful. Sure, you'll get a couple of people going onto the channel and saying, or repeating the accusations, but the majority of them stick to the plan, right? Which is just generally listen, be aware that this person's a problem, and that they've done these things in the past, and that maybe we should be a bit more cautious about what they're doing, and a lot of people leave it at that, and that's the correct thing. Besides this one specific situation, trying to discourage their fans from doing something problematic, most content creators aren't going to speak negatively about their fan base for really obvious reasons, but a lot of the times they won't even call out, say, simp behavior when they're perfectly willing to do so for other content creators. Because, again, everyone benefits from stans and simps. Everyone benefits. but not a whole lot are going to be willing to admit that, because it's sort of the man behind the curtain effect, right? It's backstage of YouTube, which is an odd concept to talk about since literally anybody can kick up a YouTube channel. But yeah, that's kind of the feeling that one gets when listening to someone talk about other people's fan bases. But at the end of the day, personally, I have no issues if you simp or stand for somebody. Again, as long as you're not hurting anybody in the process, go ham. It's your time, it's your money. Do what you want. Okay? You're fully capable of thought, I assume, anyways. So, make your own decisions. At the end of the day, I don't often speak about my goals for YouTube. I don't often speak about why I'm here. I have a couple of specific reasons I'm here on YouTube. One is which I just enjoy making videos. I clearly don't enjoy editing. Because I don't do that much editing, obviously. But I like the actual process of making videos and talking to people and getting comments and all that. I like that part of it. But one other thing that I want to accomplish with this, and this is why I have this series here, is just to get you to think. You can disagree with me. In fact, I like being disagreed with, because it allows me an accurate avenue with which to challenge my own ideas. And sometimes I'm just straight up wrong about things, and people will correct me, and I'm very grateful. I had a correction on a Grim Dawn video earlier, and I just want to give a shout out, actually. This is a weird video series to place the shout out, but I did thank them earlier as well. Undo. I'm an idiot, that's Undo. Undo commented on my ranged infiltrator pierce conversion build that I'd made a mistake on how armor piercing works, and they gave me the timestamp and everything, and that was absolutely lovely. If Undo8558 ever listens to these talks, thank you. Again, I did thank them again in the comment section originally, but this is... I'll give you 3 of my goals. This is not all of my goals for YouTube, but here's 3 of them. I won't talk about these often, because it's self-defeating. But the first is because I just enjoy it. The second is to get you to think. What your thoughts lead to, that's your business, it's your prerogative. I just want you to think about things. If your thoughts cause you to disagree with my opinions and thoughts, totally fine. That's part of the third thing. If you disagree with me, great. Put it in a comment. I want to engage with it. Going back to the Incel series, which was one of my favorites because of the responses I got on that, I was correctly stated as being unsympathetic, which is something I have a problem with. I'm very emotionally detached from a lot of things. It's something I've tried to work on and failed. I'm going to be brutally honest. I still have a problem with it, obviously, but it's valid criticism. And that's the kind of thing that I like, is that back and forth. Obviously, the more respectful it is, the better, because for me, it's not about winning or losing a conversation or an argument or whatever. It's about the thought processes. You can insult me all you want. Some of them are actually really funny. Some of the insults I've gotten are hilarious. Seethe and Cope is my favorite. No, I'm sorry. It was Cope and Seethe. Absolutely hilarious. But that's the third reason. I don't get out much in terms of what a lot of people would consider getting out. I wake up, I go to work. I work with my coworkers, all of whom have their own perspectives. I know these perspectives by and large by this time. I go back home, I make a video, I eat food, I play the video games, I watch things. I don't really do much besides these handful of things. So my ability to interact with new perspectives comes from this, from YouTube. Which is why I've expanded out to these conversations, these talks. Although, to be fair, I think I might once again start slapping these onto TikTok again. If you didn't know, this series actually started on TikTok, but uploading half-hour conversations or half-hour plus conversations on TikTok is a pain in the ass. I might start doing that again, though, because every, couple of weeks I'll get likes on talks that I've had, like the whole series of talks. And actually, originally, the reason why I switched to Elden Ring, when I originally was doing these talks, I was using Cloudpunk as a background, but the city in Cloudpunk all looks the same. At the very least, with Elden Ring, I can change up the background visuals by teleporting somewhere and sitting down like this. So, besides taking advantage of the gorgeous perspectives of Elden Ring, I can also differentiate it where it's easier for you as a viewer to know what's attached to what, which was very difficult to do when I was using Cloudpunk as a background. But it's that commentary, that back and forth. If you disagree with me, great. Let me know. I would love to talk about it. Because if you don't leave a comment saying, hey, I disagree for this, this, and this reason, how can I expand my viewpoint? And if we don't talk, how can either of us expand our viewpoints? That's what I want. At the end of the day, maybe we just agree to disagree, but that would still be fine. We engaged, we thought, and we talked. And I think that's fantastic. One of my big problems with modern day culture that has come about via social media, one of the real problems of social media, a lot of people have a lot of problems with social media, a lot of them are extraneous, they're not really that important, or they've existed throughout time, just not necessarily on the internet. But one of the things that I will say humanity has gotten weaker at is the ability to just have a disagreement. People have this urge to win an argument. People have this urge to be triumphant or to prove themselves better somehow by winning an argument. This is in fact one of the reasons why people don't like Pokimane. She'll say something incorrect, like claiming streaming on Kick is immoral, whereas apparently streaming on Twitch is not just as immoral. As Charlie from Moist Critical once pointed out, both Amazon, the owner of Twitch, and Stake, the owner of Kick, both companies are villains in their own way. There is no hero here. So to claim Kick streamers are morally inferior to Twitch streamers is a nonsense argument. Right? Instead of having that dialogue, she doubled down and then victimized herself. That's not a constructive conversation. She has not changed anyone's minds, nor has she proven herself correct. She's done nothing constructive with that conversation. And there were people right there willing to have an intelligent, calm discussion. She could still have disagreed with them. I'm not saying that she should have fallen over and agreed with them. That's not the point of discussion. The point of discussion is, I have this view, you have this differing view, let's talk about it. I feel this way or I think this way because of this, this, and this, and then you offer yours. And maybe I agree with you, maybe you agree with me when everything's laid out, or maybe we just agree to disagree. And that's fine. But that's been lost. That's not something that happens very often anymore. And that is a problem. Because until people can once again sit down and just have a disagreement calmly, we'll keep sliding backwards. And that's one thing humanity cannot afford. But, with that being said, thank you all very much for listening to me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, or you want to become a simp, please leave a comment down below, I guess. Thank you all for listening, and have a great 24 hours.